You're listening to Life and Shit. I'm Danielle Walker.
And I'm Tommy Walker.
Join us as we talk about our journey overcoming fears, boundaries, marriage, family, lifestyle, business, and whatever other shit you can think of.
We're individuals that came together to create one unit with one mind and one goal.
Hey.
What's up, girl?
How you doing, baby?
I am outstanding.
Outstanding.
Trying to set this clock.
Trying to set the clock. How you doing today?
Man, I had, we're in August right now, and we're almost at episode 50. Like we're knocking at the door episode 50. So I'm super stoked about that. Yeah, that's dope. But July was a hell of a month.
It really was.
Fuck July right now.
Yeah, it was a healing month, a recovering month, I feel. It was good.
For you?
Yeah, I think that there's always it's rough when it's not, when it's like healing, you know?
Nah, I wasn't healing. I was sweating the entire fucking month of July. Now I'm glad it's August.
I'm glad we have this delicious wine, too. You want to talk a little bit
Shout
about?
out to Shyt Soleste. That's the wine that we're drinking on today. Welcome to Life and Shit, and we're super honored to have Shyt Soleste. And this is the Soltero wine, which is probably one of the most delicious wine I've ever had.
Delicious.
Like this is fire. So Shyt Soleste is owned by Chris Rivera, and he has a pretty good story. You know, he talks about being from Mexico, and his family is
old school the
Aztecs. Yeah, so how the Aztecs believed that the earth will, basically we're like in the 5th and 6th generation of reincarnation kind of a deal, right?
Yeah, so it's the 5 sons.
Yeah, so he believes that we're under the 6th son right now, which the 6th son is kind of creates a community and unity and just kind of changes the dynamic of how we think and how we come together as a people.
I like that.
Like it was impressive to like just listen to just a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But shout out to Shyt Soleste and Chris Rivera over there, and thank you for blessing us with this delicious bottle of wine.
Yes, it's definitely a premium red blend. It's delicious. I have a question for you.
I'm ready.
What is your sexual fantasy?
I am not ready.
What's your fantasy?
My sexual fantasy? Mm-hmm. Are we talking like when we first got together, sexual fantasy?
Maybe some like they changed. You fulfilled? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, my brother's 40 years old now, so yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we first got together, my sexual fantasies was as a 23-year-old. Today, they look different. They probably cost more money. I don't know.
Probably a little different than they were before, right?
Exactly. You experience some things, your mind opens up a little bit.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I was in a box at 23 years old. Yeah. So that box opened up. So if you was to ask me today, as you did, I want to join the Mile High Club. I really want to join the Mile High Club.
Okay.
I don't see it happening on a commercial flight, so I got to make enough money to go get my own jet.
What does that entail, though? Is it like intercourse or just have a moment?
Shit, girl, I've had a moment.
I know, so I was going to say. So I think that you're in the Mile High Club.
No, that does not qualify.
I did a little hand help.
On a commercial flight. I didn't say it, you did.
Well, I just wanted to, put it
you wanted to justify whether or not I'm in the club?
I think I'm not in the club, but you are.
You're definitely not in the club. That would have required extra work, and I probably would have had like carpal tunnel when I was done. But in the true essence of a Mile High Club, I am not a member officially. I might be honorary for certain things. But,
I love it.
But that's my fantasy.
I love it.
How about you?
My fantasy is, I don't know. I think I have lots of fantasies.
Oh
maybe.
shit! Goddamn. You talk about me. You just made me sweat.
Mine's are more adventure, sex in different places, but like I guess the same, but not Mile High, right? Like before we used to be very adventurous in sex, so we're not as much, and I think that's just something I like.
Okay. I don't like the way you say we're not as much.
Well, we used to have sex in the bathroom.
Like if I got lazy.
We used to have sex in the bathroom, babe. Like we just don't do that now. You know, like
yeah. Well, It was for multiple reasons because we
Yeah,
tried
we're
to have
sneaking.
sex. Yeah, we were sneaking around. It was like, oh shit, this is the greatest time.
That's all we got. Let's go.
Yeah. Now we got a house. We got a couple of roommates in the house, so we try to have sex when the roommates are
We
asleep.
can have sex on the side of our house maybe twice a week.
No, that's what happens when you own a house. You go inside. There's a lot of reasons why we had sex on the side of the house. We're talking about sexual fantasies today. And the conversation's already got weird and deep, but we're going there today. And we have a very special guest in the house.
Yes.
I would like to introduce this young lady. She's a life coach, relationship certified since 2007. Went on a journey to find her inner she. And when you hear how that inner she came together and just kind of where she came from in her history and her story, it's very profound and powerful. And it's a conversation that women aren't very prone to, because when you hear Robyn's story, it's something that people kind of break down and hide from and find shame in it. But Robyn, you actually found strength in it.
Yes.
And then took that strength and now are empowering other people. So super dope. I know Robyn from real estate, so we were both working together in real estate, and I knew about the side hustles, and runs multiple businesses, coached multiple people, been doing this for multiple years. It's pretty dope, and I'm honored to have you here. Welcome to the show, Robyn Vaughn. I'm gonna try this for the first time.
Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I remember when Tommy first met with you at the coffee shop. He came home and he was like a firecracker. He was just like, she does this and she does that and she does that. She gave me this website and this and this and that. And I was like, wow, this Robyn is amazing, you know? So I appreciate that. I appreciate all that you showed him and bringing him in and
that was
giving him that,
that was like the marketing
that
website.
he had. Yeah. So it was pretty awesome. So tell the world, because one thing people always want to know is if you're single and ready to mingle, or if you're married and settled.
I am blissfully married.
Nice. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I am.
How long have you been married?
We've been married 13 years.
13
actually.
years.
We just had our 13th wedding anniversary, July 17th.
Congratulations.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a good month to have an anniversary.
Yes.
And then occupation.
So I'm a full-time realtor here in the state of California.
Nice.
But I also have a life and relationship coach business called Definitions. And then I run the CEO of Simple Heavenly Essence, which is a online and in-home party platform where we kind of bring wine, adult novelties, chocolates, a number of different things, and create an evening.
Oh, that's dope. Tell me the name of it one more time.
So it's called Simple Heavenly Essence. So
Heavenly Essence. I love that.
Yes.
That's what she stands for.
That's what she stands for.
I like that. And then what do you do for fun?
So for me, it's funny that you asked that. I have a great family. I have grandkids and stuff, but I still find Robyn's personal passion in this industry. I love real estate, but to me that's work, but I still love it. But helping couples find their way has definitely been a passion of mine, and it's still definitely that. It's my hobby. Like my friend said, oh, that's your hobby. You just love doing it. You never do anything, other than that. But when you're so fulfilled with what you do, it isn't work. And it is, something that I enjoy. And I've been in the business over 35 years. So I'm pretty excited.
Wow.
That's such a, when people, I don't know if people really understand that when you're doing something that you actually love, it don't feel like work. Like
It doesn't.
So when people tell us all the time, like, oh, you need a break, or you need to do this, or you need to, it's like, no, I don't.
Yeah,
like I'm not sitting here losing my hair.
No.
Like my skin still looks amazing.
Yeah.
So
it's only my eyes sometimes. I look a little tired, but other than that, I'm like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Well, you look tired because you actually get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and look at your phone.
That's
Yeah.
well.
It's not because of work.
It is because of work. And last thing, what are your dreams?
So I think my ultimate dream at my age now, I'm 53, and my dream now is to help as many women find their inner she as possible. Because I think in this world with so much stress and so much happening, and whether we have the rights to our own body, via the government or not, it is your body and you have the rights to it. And just being able to explore what you want to explore and take your body on that journey, I think there's no better blessing that a man or woman can have.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And share a little bit more. I know before you told us a little bit about your story, but share a little more with us about that.
So I got on this journey kind of in an odd way. I was sexually assaulted at the age of 16, and that resulted in a pregnancy. And given that my father was very much Catholic, abortion was not an option. And at that age, I was still a child and had to do pretty much what I was told to do. Mm-hmm. So he said, okay, you're going to have this baby, and that was kind of it. So, he sent me off to kind of just find that space, and, I'm biracial, so I had a lot of that. I didn't want to be, or he didn't want me to be, a statistic. My father's white, my mother's black. So there was kind of a lot of that, and not understanding, where my place was now going to be, what my dreams were going to be with, having children and stuff. So in that journey, I have a great aunt who lives in Canada, and she really helped me a lot to understanding that this is your body in spite of what has happened and in spite of what you're going to go through. This is your body, and it's time for you to find and take ownership of that again, and letting me know that having still sexual desires and feelings and those things, that it was okay, and that having those things didn't invite what happened to me, right? So my father did say to me, said, you can be a victim or you can take control of your life. Which one is it going to be? Mm-hmm. And at 16, that's, a big understanding. I kind of had to say, like, well, what does that really mean? Right. Because at the same time, in the next breath, he said, well, it's not about you anymore because now you have this child, right? So I'm still a child myself, but, I had great parents, and, without their support, I wouldn't have been able to go through what I went through. But, he, introduced me to a gentleman. That's who I ended up marrying. Again, yes, somewhat of an arranged marriage. He was 12 years older than me, but my father was older, and felt like you're going to need someone to take care of you, right? So I married, and great guy, and raised our kids, great. We're still great together, now, even though we're not together, divorced, but we're still very much close and still raise our children, and they're in their 30s. So for all those that something like this has happened to, you can take control of your life and have a beautiful relationship with a partner, and know that what you're feeling is your right to feel.
1,000%, and getting over that shame and not bringing that baggage into your relationship.
Exactly.
Taking your sexuality back and owning it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And your aunt was like a coach.
She was.
Was her history in health, or?
No, she also had suffered a sexual assault, and which is why she left the States, and she went to Canada to find herself, and that's what she did. And even talking to her today, she still remembers that little girl, but she's like, I'm so proud of who you've become, 1,000%. And we're actually planning a trip to go see her. This, before the end of the year, but just having, I always say to people, how did you overcome? I had amazing women in my life. And I think that's something that's kind of missing today. As women, we don't support each other as much as we used to. We don't say, hey, sister, I love you, and I'm speaking from a place of love, like this, change this about your life, or, let me help you. I think we criticize each other so much that, or we're,
so competitive.
Exactly. Whether, who cares if your hair is real, your nails are real. Well, let's be women, because we're the foundation. We are the foundation. So if we continue to hold that and take ourselves to that place and say, hey, I'm entitled to what I want in life, and nothing's going to stand in my way of getting it. And if we continue to empower each other, there's no stopping us.
That's 1,000%.
There's no stopping us.
We had a conversation about that. I think yesterday we had that conversation. No, Saturday, when we was talking about, because you had a meeting with some employees, and our female employees, you encourage. You were encouraging them, and I was like, that's exactly what they need, especially in a industry that we're in, when it's very male driven. But you're the chief operating officer of a very male driven industry, right? And then the women in our company need that sense of like, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how it works. Let me encourage you. Let me empower you, versus just coming from me, right? It's like that it could be normal, or it could be like, that's just the boss. But to hear it from you, takes you to a different world. It goes further than if I just said it. You know?
Yeah, to pick them. Yeah, it's great. It always feels good to give that shout out and really mean it. You know,
exactly.
It's just not a compliment or just like an empty like remark, but it's like, hey, like I see you and I appreciate you and I see your hard work.
1000%.
So, we're talking about sexual fantasies today. And that was loaded. It's like the segue in, right? Taking control of your body and being able to do what the hell you want, right? And from and flipping it from that, it's like so what do you want now? You know, it's you. At this point in our lives, we have so much sexual freedom, right? So there's so many different sexual fantasies that we can have. So I kind of want to just talk about some of them.
Yeah. Well, Robyn, are you okay with telling us what your sexual fantasies?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you dropped to 53 years old. I didn't expect for you to drop your age. So
I know. And you said you had kids. So I was like, wait, what? You damn sure don't look like it. I'll tell you that. You look really good for your age.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'm lucky because my husband's very open. When we first got together, he kind of wasn't. But he knew what I did when we met. So it was like, hey, if you're down for the roller coaster, then you look big enough to ride the ride. So
got room in the car.
Let's go ahead. I think that my ultimate sexual fantasy right now is to have like hot sex on hot rocks. That I think to me, like I'm cold. I've done the kind of like outside thing. We've done, but I think something so like to just be slathered in oil on hot rocks, and I just think to me it's like that initial sting. You know, that is that. Yeah. I'm gonna have to make that happen now that I spoke it out loud.
and it's very doable. Right? Yes. Very doable. Yes. But when you said hot rocks, and the first thing that got on my head is when I had the massage. So Danielle orders the stones for my massage, and she puts the rocks right on the lower part of my back. I almost squealed. I was like,
He's like, maybe I don't like the rocks.
I was like, I don't like the rocks. So to hear is like, oh man. So sexual fantasies that you could go anywhere you want.
And so it sounds like we all kind of concentrated more on adventure sex, right? So that's like sex outside. That's on a bus, different positions, 69. That's like adventure sex.
That's not a fantasy. That should come natural.
Some people don't have 69s.
That means you need to go to Robyn's class. Then.
Exactly,
Robyn right? Your coach.
Exactly.
That's like sex 101. Yeah.
Oral sex. Some people, that's a fantasy. Some people don't do oral sex.
They do. It's true. Very true.
You're right about that. Yes. So
anal sex.
That's a part of the 26. Well, depending on which way you go, that it's normal for some. Not the others.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it can be.
Yeah.
Right? If you take away the taboo and the stigma of it, then it can be both ways. And there are a lot of men, I coach a lot of men that are heterosexual, and I know we're probably going to get those little comments, they're on the down low and all that. No. Understanding your body and understanding that a man can have multiple orgasms without ejaculating, exercising his prostate, that is so we say as women we want him to last long, we want him to go long. Okay, well there's ways that he can do that if he understands how to work his body and how to control his prostate. So having a partner that's open to that is where it's going to allow your partner to also experience their sexual fantasies as well.
Yeah,
that's real talk. So
totally
knowing your body is 1,000. So back to what I was saying, like at 23 years old, I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
So that's one thing about a man is our ego grows up faster than we do. Like for whatever reason, your ego is 50, but you're 20 years old and you're talking funny. like you got your shit together and you don't. And I'm glad that you said that, because one of the things when it comes to sexual fantasy, like we're talking about it, but why don't we know about each other's sexual fantasies? And I'm talking relationships. I ain't talking about friends at a table. Yeah. Like unless you're open to that, that's perfectly fine. But why are we not having that conversation?
We keep it hidden. Maybe ashamed of it. Like here's another, the last adventure one that I have. Bukkake. Is that how you say it?
Bukkake.
Right? Now, if I wanted that done to me and I told you that, you might look at me different. You may be like
1,000%. I mean,
really?
Like, oh shit, what you been reading?
Yeah, or watching, right?
How the fuck you even know that word?
Yeah, Cards Against Humanity. Yeah. we had to Google it.
And the other thing is that I find that in the partners are saying the first question is, so who have you done that with? That you're now asking to do it with me.
That's and that's real talk, because so right off the back, I'm assume that you've done that before.
Exactly.
And I'm telling you, no, it's just a fantasy of mine. But like I said, like to even get to that point, to open up and be able to have a conversation.
Because we've been married a while, so, and you've been married a while, 13 years. So it once your fantasies change or something comes to light, you know, like, well, I didn't like that before, but now I do. So it's one of those, you have to be open. You
Yeah.
have to be open.
That and-
you have to be able to share.
And shame, like you said, shame comes down to it. Like if you're afraid that you're going to be judged. That's one of the things where I always say, like, I hate judgment. Like I can't stand judgment.
Yeah.
But if I can't have a conversation with you as my spouse, friend, partner, whatever you want to category me as, if I can't be open and transparent in who I am, then you're judging me, and therefore this relationship has a ceiling, right? So how do we crack the ceiling? Is we need to be able to be like super free. I need to be able to fly.
Well, and then there's the not judging, but because I know I've learned not to judge, not to be judgmental or to even be like, what? That's if you tell me something, right? And I didn't understand that it was even judgment. I just was just like, that's my opinion. So, and it's like, well, no, that's kind of judging me, you know? It's like, okay. But learning that that's what you do, and that's okay. But then knowing that there's limits, and that may be my limits. Like I'm not okay with that. That's okay that you're okay with it, but I'm not okay with it. And that's one of the issues as well, right? So you say that you want to do something, and that person's just like, that's really not what I want to do. So now what?
Now we're at a stalemate,
right?
How would you talk a couple out of that, Robyn?
It's education. Right, and it's and I sound so cliche when people say, "Oh, communication, and education is the key," right? Because if you don't know how to do that, then that's just words, right? So when you're trying to express, like, "Hey, I want to try this," you know, what do you think? And then your partner's kind of like, "Oh my God, like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, what is that even exactly?" Right? So I think understanding one. I think the biggest thing that I notice that couples that I take my clients through is understanding your anatomy. If you don't understand your anatomy and you don't understand your partner's anatomy, then it's kind of hard to visualize what that might look like, feel like, sound like, you know, those kind of things. So understanding your anatomy is huge, right? And then, I don't know how deep we can go on this show, but even for a woman, if you're hooded or not hooded, like some positions are super uncomfortable and painful because you're non-hooded. And some are because you're hooded, you know, well, that don't mean anything to me. I don't feel anything, right? So understanding your anatomy will help your partner to understand how to maneuver your body, right? But that comes with self-discovery too, which a lot of people don't self-discover anymore. And that falls a lot on religion. You know, I don't masturbate. I don't do these things.
We talked about that too. It's like how you got to know yourself before you can have somebody else know you. And then, and we go as deep as you want to. We talk about hooded and unhooded.
This is life and shit.
And people need to know, you
They
know,
do.
like some women, they'll walk around with a hooded click and they'll be wondering like, well, why don't I orgasm like these women that just like come all over the place, you know? It's like, oh, because you have just got to work a little harder.
Right.
Yours
It's
is a little bit hidden, you know, and you got to kind of pull it out there and work at it. And theirs is just like bing, you know.
Right.
So it's a difference. You know?
Positions matter when those type of things, and even him, if he has a curve, he doesn't have a curve. What's the best way to address that? Like, so there's knowing, understanding each other, and that helps for exploring, like. You know, when I hear men say, my wife has never explored my body, that was the first thing I did.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know every inch of you, right?
I was like, where'd you get this from? How this happened?
Yeah.
Where'd that go?
But as women, we don't. We don't.
And I now, from a man perspective, like, to even hear that is like, you want to explore my body. First of all, that just sounds like magic. It's like, well, me, I'm open, right? But I can't imagine for some men to be like, you want to explore, like, oh. Well, what does that mean? Don't go here. Don't, because men are like, going back to what we said. Some men are just like, don't go back here. Don't touch that. Don't do this. Stay right here.
But it's in how you do it.
Yeah.
Right. But when
That's
you're
true.
exploring his body, it's about respecting each other's boundaries. I mean, don't often goose him. You know what I mean? Like, give him that time. But when you massage and take your hands or hot rock or anything anything that
She likes the hot
vibrates
rocks,
or
y'all.
right across someone's body, and you learn to listen to the rhythm their body gives back. Not so much the words but what's the rhythm the body's given.
Yep.
If they're falling into it, then you know you're on the right path. Don't revert. Just kind of take it there. And then they're going to let you know whether or not you're going someplace that's kind of uncomfortable, right? So again, there's no need to rush. We have all the time in the world. And that's the other thing is everybody kind of rushes through it, right?
It's like, it's happening, let's go.
Right, they hit the main spots and they think that's having sex, right? But
so
there's
true.
so much more to it. How are you talking to each other? How are you you listen to the breath that I'm, letting out? Like, there's so much more to understanding your partner's body than what he or she is saying or what he and she feels comfortable with saying. The body will tell you if you're listening.
Yeah.
That's 1,000%. I'm a firm believer in body language.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So sexual fantasies usually come, right, from what? Your visual component, or if you're imaginary component. Like, if you look at some of the normal sexual fantasies, some of them are quite funny, like having sex with an ex or having sex with a celebrity, right? Like, these are different fantasies.
So
at what point can we have a conversation about sexual fantasies? Like, is that something, because we just did an episode on sexpectations. Should we have that conversation early?
before, definitely
Yeah.
you should have it before you get married. What your fantasies
Well, even if you're
are, it's
dating.
like-
How about if you're dating? Like,
even
if you have
you're
no
dating.
plans?
Yeah, even if this is my sexual desires.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
it's
think you should just put them on the. I mean, if you're with someone, once sex becomes like it's on the table with each other, like, okay, we're gonna have sex. Okay, well, let me tell you.
Once
this
you
is
cross
what
the
I like.
boundary, like, as soon as you have sex, then it's
No,
like,
no,
all
no.
right.
I say before, to be honest.
Oh.
If you're honest, you
Okay.
know what I mean. And if you really don't care about judgment, because if that person judges you, then that may not be the person for you. You want someone who's going to be like, really, not like, really. And if they're like that now, then they're going to be like that. Once you're in a month from now, unless you're like, okay, I'm going to get with this person and kind of manipulate them or just ease them into this. Like, have you ever thought about this? Every now and again, kind of bring up. And then, after you've been with them a couple of months, it's like, well, you kind of were into it. So now we're at a sex club, right?
All of a sudden.
Yeah. But another fantasy, another another set of fantasies that people kind of go for is like the power and control, right? So that's the BDM, right?
BDSM.
BDSM.
Yeah.
BDM, BDSM. The power control, the boss and the employee, or the student and the teacher, the professor, right?
That's a normal fantasy. Like, all that is normal. It's the reason why, for Halloween people dress up as the cop and robber,
sexy
right?
teachers
or
and
the
the sexy
teachers.
nurse and the doctor.
It's always that that power control of the boss and whoever. And I don't think I've ever had that, because I never had no good looking bosses. So, and when I was a kid, my teachers were all old, so I never had a power control kind of a thing. But you're absolutely correct.
And then 50 Shades of Grey dropped, and every woman wanted to get spanked all of a sudden.
Yeah, like I don't
everyone
understand
was just
why
like,
50 Shades was just like a game changer. Like, if it was brand new.
I don't think it was a game changer. I think it just opened the window that
okay.
people were kind of like, well, this whole book is out here and everybody's kind of into it. And it was kind of like that, well, I can jump on board and not be judged, right? Because everybody's reading it. Everybody's talking about it, right? So, but that didn't mean that everybody was doing it and what it really meant.
It got
right?
social proof.
It did.
Okay,
So it came from a taboo to kind of like, wow, this can be. But also, people, I think, have a misunderstanding of what BDSM is, right? So it's not all pain,
Right.
And that's where I think people kind of forget that there's some really pleasurable aspects to BDSM, whether it's flogging, so there's so many different types of flogging. Some people like a thud, where it's not painful, but it's kind of like I got that, felt that. Some people like that little dragon tail, that little sting,
the electro, what is it, like electro play?
Yes,
Where it's like they
yes.
electrocute you
That's
just a little
amazing,
bit.
actually. I don't know if you've ever
that's
tried it, but it's
and
amazing.
It kind of kind of shocks you, but doesn't like burn you. So, and then needle play, I think that's one of those things, and I think you were alluding to that, like the little cattail, where it kind of, it scratches you, but it doesn't like take the skin off, right? And, candle wax. when they like do like drip the candle, I think that's a little bit of a control thing because someone's burning you and you're just like
we
kind of
tried.
taking it.
Yeah. It doesn't burn, though,
take
yeah.
it.
No, it doesn't. No,
No, it doesn't burn, but it burns.
it's like the hot stones. Like
Yeah.
you was like, all right, let's try the candle wax. I was like, all right. It's like, pow. It's like, oh.
It was not that horrible. It was more like a drip. It was like, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like,
But in all it matters too is where you put it. Right?
that's true.
I did
So
the back
we,
thing, right?
yeah, we were just dripping it. We didn't know. It was kind of just
I was
like
trying not to burn the house down.
Yeah.
I was just more scared, like, don't catch the sheets on fire. Don't do it. I was too in my head about the whole goddamn thing.
So feet and hands are the really perfect place to try that.
Oh, shit,
stuff
really?
Initially, yeah. So hot wax across the
Look like-
toes,
Well, write that down.
even hot stones on the lower part of the feet. But again, understanding where a woman's erogenous zones are and where a man's erogenous zones are really matter, because if what works for us doesn't work for them, right? So understanding where those nice spots are for both partners and targeting those areas. And believe it or not, it's not your target area. It's not, the penis or the vagina or the breast. It's other parts of the body that are way more like the underarms, the back of the legs, the back of the knees. Those are kind of like really sensual places on a man that most women just buy right past, So if you really understand, again, explore each other's body, you'll understand that where that river can take you. And it can really take you on a wild ride. Like you can go to really do some real fantasy play without even realizing you're doing some fantasy play.
And when you get really deep into it, the one thing that's important is that you guys have good communication, like you said, with each other, right? And safe words. If you take it too far, right, to a place where you're unable to speak or talk, then, or even if you're around people, right? And it's like, hey, I'm uncomfortable, so it should be a word that I'd be able to say to you that we can get out of that situation, right? So as long as you're comfortable within it. So even if it's this control power type situation, you still have to be comfortable, right?
That takes building trust, right? So you said, let's go right into it. If sex is on the table, let's just get to it and put everything on the table. I mean, but shit, like, people got trust issues nowadays. I hear more people talk about I don't trust and I don't do this and I'm like, but you only been here for 5 minutes. Like like how all of a sudden you don't trust, so and just listening to your story, Robyn, is like how you overcame and you being able to trust again, right? And letting go a lot of that baggage. What can, especially young people, what can they do to open up those trust valves so that they can have an opportunity to explore their spouses or their significant others?
I first say close the door. Close the door to whatever. Address what's there, but then you need to close the door. And that's, it is easier said than done. But again, there's so many resources out here to be able to do that. But I think today we carry so much of yesterday with us
1000%.
that it prevents us from moving on to tomorrow or even visioning what tomorrow could be like, right? So in every aspect of our life. So and we don't realize that the place that it hits most is home, is when we're carrying that kind of baggage, right? So journal. Write down what you're feeling. Talk to your partner about it. Have a fishbowl on the table where you write a little, hey, this is what's going on with me, and drop it in, and let your partner pull it out and take a read. If sometimes people they're not able to verbally communicate strongly enough or clearly enough for your partner to kind of understand. But there's so many different ways to do it. My husband and I, we did that earlier on, like mid-marriage, where it was kind of like, I'm 9 years older than him, right? So he was open to whatever I wanted to do, but our lifestyles were different. I had already lived so much more than he had lived, right? So even just those experiences, writing it down, each have a different color index card, write down what you need to write down and drop it in. Now your spouse comes around, picks it up and reads it. One, it gives them a chance to kind of get the initial whatever you wrote on that paper shock out of their mind, but then it gives them time to mull questions over in their head before you guys sit down and kind of have a talk, right? And then also not making the talk so serious, right? It just needs to be kind of just open over a glass of wine or out to dinner over a beer, whatever, right? Because what are we talking about? Just words. They only have the impact that we allow them to have on us, right? So understanding that one, okay, this may not be for you. Let's talk. I never say why. I just say, well, then what? what would work for you? What would you like? What does this look like for you? What would it feel like for you? You know, being in the industry that I'm in, you know, I have sex toy company, you know, Intimate Tickles. I work with them. They're amazing. Derek and Virginia Brown, they have the most unique stuff I've ever seen. I mean, way beyond cages and things like that, but everything is, you know, healthy and that kind of stuff for your body. So it's not like you just going to the store and picking something up off the shelf, right? So I would get packages in the mail, and I said to my husband, well, we got some homework to do, you know? And some of those things would be like, what is this? A spaceship, you know? But it's like, but again, making it that way that it's fun and you're laughing about it and you're joking about it. And again, you don't always have to take everything straight to sex.
Right.
Doesn't have to be penetration, doesn't have to be, but it can still be exploring. You can still touch each other's body with it and those type of things and see what reaction you get out of it. But I think we've taken the play out of sex. It's so serious.
So, you know, it's funny that you say that because I look at, I say this all the time, and they always, sometimes I got to explain myself because I consider it sport. I'll be like, sex is like sport. You know, you're in it, you burn a few calories, and then you leave. Not saying that it's not it's insignificant, but I think we put a lot of weight on it, and it's not the most impactful moment in your life. You don't spend that much time doing it. It doesn't, you know, unless it is going back to how we saying like the whole addict thing, and where you become non-functional, right? And if you're into it, and then you become a non-functional human, okay, then you have to go get some help. But just the act of it is so simplistic that it don't take all the head game that we put ourselves in, and then therefore you don't enjoy it as you should. And especially when it comes to marriage. Like I feel like in marriage, people lose sex. Like sex will be off the table quickly. Like that's the first thing in marriage. It's like, oh, you mad at me or this or you don't feel this way? All right, go. Sex is the first thing that goes. Instead of saying, oh, let's work it out or let's do this or let's do that, I'm gonna punish you by taking sex away right off the bat. That's a trip to me.
So I think that should be in your marriage contract. That's the first thing, yeah, that my husband and we talked about right from the beginning, is that that's a deal breaker, right? So I will never deny you, you never deny me, right? We never use sex as a punishment or anything like that. Or if I'm mad at you, great, we're gonna work it out, right? But we can do that. It's a little rough play. We can do a little tie up. We can do a little something, but we're gonna work it out. But sex has never been one of those things where it's kind of like, oh, I'm mad at you, we're not having sex, or, you know, you didn't do what I wanted you to do, we're not having sex, or that kind of. So I think that, again, revisiting what that means. But I think, too, the biggest thing that people forget is that they stop kissing. If you think back to all the times that you've kind of slipped off of the, you know, having sex on a regular basis, it's pleasurable. Right?
Very true.
So
Very true.
it's a stress reliever. It can take away aches and pains. It can clear your mind. It can do all these things. Why are we not doing it enough? Because it's become a chore, right? It's looked on as a chore, right? And some women are made to feel like it's her obligation, or those type of things. So there's so much more to peeling back that onion than saying, oh, you use sex as a weapon, right? Well, again, if he's doing what he should be doing and making her feel beautiful and acceptable and loved and desired, right? But it's the same. So many men tell me, like, I want to feel desired. Why am I always the one that makes the first move? Why do I always have to initiate? And those kind of things. Well, it's not that women don't want to initiate sex, right? But we look at the laundry list of things we have to do, and that's kind of like the last thing on the list, right?
Yep.
But you know, exactly.
And then you look at the single women who haven't had sex in like 4 or 5 months or whatever, however, even a week for them, you know what I mean? And then you have sex, they're ready, you know, and
they're
sex
ready.
Is different for them, right?
They have a different,
that's real talk.
Yeah, it's like,
they have a different mindset about it.
Sex is not the on that last list. It's not like 10 on the list.
Not.
It's probably like 2. You know?
Right.
Brush your teeth and then sex.
Yeah.
What you mean?
What's that going?
And you know the number one fantasy in America. What would you think it is?
Group sex.
Yep. Threesomes.
1000%.
Threesomes. Yeah. That's like the American dream. Or the American fantasy dream.
Honestly, I mean, that when you listen to the music, when you look at the culture, when you look at what's on TV today, like, I mean, you could tell what America is thinking about because it's on TV.
That's true.
Right? So if you look at a lot of these shows, a lot of them look the same. They all got the same kind of underlying content. So, yeah, I could definitely believe that. Now, sexual fantasies also is not just for being bored. Like, that's the other, is like people think like, oh, my marriage is great, so why should I have a sexual fantasy? Or I'm not bored in my marriage, so I shouldn't have that. Or not even but you shouldn't have to, or you shouldn't have sexual fantasies because we're not bored.
But sexual fantasies aren't always all crazy and stuff, right? Like there's passion and romance, right? Like a sexual fantasy could be to be loved or my body explored, right? That's an adventure of my body, but that's not the power control. But that could be a fantasy of my own, you know, from head to toe. Maybe no one's ever like given me that intimacy.
Yeah, so that's the
romantic
novelty category
part of it. Yeah, right. Maybe I want to go on a long walk. That's romantic to me. That's
not
fantasy.
a sexual fantasy though.
It might be a fantasy,
but it can be, right?
But it can be. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's different because I'm not being banged and sexually like. You know, but that can stimulate me in a different way, right? And after that long walk, I probably want to have a lot of sex, or you know, whatever. It just changes, so it's different. So there's passion and romance as well as fantasies. It's not always about being banged or or being dressed as a bunny and getting fucked or whatever.
But the biggest thing is intimacy. That's the number one thing that's missing. And I think as a culture, if we open up to intimacy again, then sexual fantasy and all those things will just kind of roll a natural play, right? It's like going to like a new movie's coming out, or you want to go see that movie. So why is something new that came into your mind, why is it any different? Right? Yeah. Why does it have to be a sexual fantasy? Why can it not be our reality?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the biggest thing that people have to understand too, that sexual fantasy isn't just a fantasy, it can be your reality. But cueing in that intimacy is what's going to open the door for your partner to be kind of open to exploring new things.
Now, with that said, what about taboo sex? Quote unquote taboo or like forbidden sex. So that would be someone who has like a foot fetish, right? Or that's a different kind of fantasy, right? That maybe it would be hard to kind of succumb to.
So speaking on that, I had a guy before I got married, and he would pay.
Like, way before I got married. Way
before I got married, and he would pay for me to go to the shoe store, and we would go to the shoe store, and we wouldn't speak a word to each other. And he'd be on the other side. My sister and I were just talking about this, and he would sit on the other side, and he would. Whatever shoe I tried on, if he liked it, it got put on the counter. And at the end, I would leave with 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pairs of shoes, and he had his fantasy, but there was no sex. It was just I had to stand a certain way. I had to kind of just, my toenails would be painted a certain color. So again, for someone that means to them, oh, that's so weird. But if that was his thing, right? But there was no sex. It was just he loved feet, but it was adamant. He had to pick out the color, the toenail polish. He had to pick it out, all of it. So I mean, my shoe collection is probably 500-600 pairs.
I'm sure,
right? So, but again, like fantasy can be anything. It doesn't have to be like you were saying. It doesn't have to be the sexual act of it. It could just be the thought of it.
So I mean, so in having that conversation so were you a stranger, or were you like, how close to you were?
He was a client.
He was a client.
He was a fantasy client. So I did the BDM, the dominatrix.
Okay.
And so it was that kind of, but different arrays of clients.
Yeah.
That was one of my clients was more foot
people
fetish.
who are obsessed with leather. That just leather turns them on. And that's just different, right? So, or it could be something like licking armpits, something that's just what they like.
Yeah, well, what I was going to ask was like, how will that affect a relationship? Like, so if that gentleman goes into a relationship, right, and then he says, "Hey, this is what I'm into," so one thing about when you're exploring your fantasies, it's how does it affect your relationship, and it's almost like a gamble. The reason why I feel like people don't talk about it is because you're gambling. It's like,
that's hard. I understand you're saying. How do you put that on the table, right? Like, well, I like to lick armpits, and then they're gonna be like, that's a hard conversation.
Well, licking armpits is pretty.
That's a hard sell.
Well, it's really not. It's very erotic tissue there. So
she's like, no, it feels very good. You guys should try it.
Right?
It's just not deodorant on,
Exactly.
right?
What I'm saying is pretty isolated. Like, it's like if somebody said, "Yo, I like licking armpits," you'd probably be like, "Okay, sure." But if you got a dude that goes into a relationship and says, "Hey, I'm in a hey, I like you. We're going to be in a relationship, but I like this. There's a specific thing that I need, and this is what it is. I take this young lady to a store. I watch her put on shoes, and every time she buys a pair of shoes, now he's in a relationship every time because this is where my fantasy is. How does that affect my relationship now?
I think, again, communication. I think, we ask each other, like, what's your sign, or, whatever, those kind of silly things, right?
Yeah, super.
So, when I started
superficial.
dating my husband, I gave him a book that said How to Love Me. And it's a blank book, and I gave him one. And his was blank, and I said, okay, we're gonna fill these out before our next date. So if you want to see me again, complete the book. And then our next date was just an exchange of the book over coffee. We didn't even open it. So before we dated for the third time, we both read How to Love Me. And that's, if it's a little book, you can get at Barnes & Noble or whatever, but it has it's kind of some silly things in it. What newspaper I read, what's my favorite color, those type of things. But it has some really deep things in there. And I think if you understand how you want to be loved, right? You got to share that with the person that you're expecting to be able to do these things. And one or two things are going to happen. They're going to open this book and be like, wow, I'm ready for this adventure. Or they're like, this chick's crazy, so, right, whatever. So either way, you saved yourself, the headache, right? So I think today, a lot of couples don't do that. A lot of people dating, they don't do that. They're so busy trying to find someone, not the right someone, but they're just trying to find someone. But if they put a little time in self-discovery, they will bring that person that is going to be open to anything that they're doing. Now, try it once, maybe twice, and then, okay, respect it if that person is not into it.
That's like where I get to why do people have these fantasies, right? Like why do you fantasize, right? And that's it. That's it right there. You want to escape reality. There's certain things that you weren't able to talk about and that you want to be open about. So what are some things that you guys think would reasons why you fantasize?
Why I fantasize? I don't know. I think for me,
people fantasize.
Yeah, I'm about to say. I think it's just natural. Like I don't know. It just comes. Like, oh shit, like that would be cool. And then if you could actually live it, I guess for me, manifesting is one of those things too. It's like if I can manifest something, to me, it's pretty cool that that happened. Like, oh, first it was a thought, it was an idea, and then all of a sudden it's real. So for me, it don't have to. Back to what we were saying, it doesn't always have to be everything sexual, but just in life, period. I fantasize about, having my own boat, fantasize about my own yacht, right? Yeah. So that's all a fantasy too. And it's not, sexual fantasy is not on my vision board, but that is, right? Wow. So my vision board, I do have fantasies up there, and
that's true.
And I'm open about those, but you don't see,
you got to put some sexual fantasies
I got
on
the airplane
board,
on there for a reason. I got owning my own jet up there for a reason.
You got to put sex.
So I could put Mile High Club easily up there. But for us, we have conversation. So for me, I could be open to you about sexual fantasy. Robyn, you said something really dope. You was talking about writing things down and putting it in a fishbowl and then going in.
Different color cards.
Yeah, that was pretty dope because we used to do coupons. Remember that back in the days? So whenever I did something cool, Danielle would give me a coupon and she'd be like, all right, you can cash this coupon in whenever you want. And it was like, whenever I want. Yeah. And usually it was those times where if we had the house to ourselves or if you was extremely mad at me, then I would.
That's why I stopped giving them coupons.
Yeah. I was like,
because I had to cash them in. I was like, really, right now? I'm not liking you right now, but I gotta do it.
Yeah. That's the sexual contract. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it comes back down to. So communicating and understanding is everything, right? And you may not communicate because of your past. That's when it comes down to it, your past is the most of why you're not being upfront. And then the second part of that is the judgment. other part of that, they might not be ready. Like you talked about reading a book, like that's work. Like that right now, this culture it's instant gratification, right? That's why we're online, because we don't have the time to go out and actually get to know someone. So we was watching some crazy ass show about the future of sex, and they was talking about coordinating where two people will meet at one spot together and sit on a bench. And if you follow this app, then the app is telling you, be on this bench at this time.
And if that person's there, then they want to have sex.
And if somebody else shows up on that same bench at that time, they're both on the app, then that's what instantly it's supposed to, it's supposed to give. I was like, that's like, you take away all the hard work, all the communication, all the talk.
I think today they have it made for sexual communication. The fact that they don't understand how to use it is something different, but I think they have it made. You know, you can talk about anal. It's on TV. It's in, it's on the radio. It's in the music. It's like, we wear graphics on our T-shirts. Like, it's all there, right? So they have it way more than we had it. We didn't, at my age, I was lucky my parents were open about it, but not every parent was, and even my own kids, 35 and 30, their friends would be at my house, and we'd be, I'd be getting ready for a sex toy show, and there's dildos everywhere, and I'm like, damn, your mom's kind of cool, like, what's that, But it was like, we'd have these little she talks where everyone kind of sit down and we like, what's going on, like talk about, make sure you're out there having safe sex. But now it's so easy.
Yes,
it's so easy. Religion is open. People are open to talk about religion, where before we weren't able to talk about religion. It's like, well, you're Catholic, you don't even think about it, right? But you're gonna, you say secretly, right? But now it's all there.
Everything's on the
table. So why? Why are we not? That's the big question. Why is it sexual fantasy and not sexual exploration? Why are we not exploring it, right? What's our excuse? It's not that, right? If you really want to get down to why we have sexual fantasies, it's simply the not to know how. They don't know how, right? They can borrow someone else's sexual fantasy, whether it's the Mile High Club or Hot Rock Sex or, whatever the case. They can borrow someone else's, but the truth is that people today are not in touch with their own bodies, so therefore they borrow sexual fantasy, and therefore they don't, because it's borrowed. They don't do it.
It's not real. Yeah.
Damn, that's dope.
Never becomes real.
That's dope.
I love it.
What's your final thought?
I love it. I just say I like to play games. And my final quote is, I warn you, I like to play games. Which is a quote by Tiffany Redson.
I warn you, I like to play games?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. All right. I'm going to watch out for that one. Robyn, please tell us, where can we find you? Where are you on social media? Where are you on the internet?
So I'm all over the internet, but my website is simpleheavenlyessence.com, and I'll make sure you guys have that. But pretty much you can find me on Facebook, just on my regular name, Robyn Vaughn. You can find me. You find all my different businesses are all there. But I do home parties and private events and couples events and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Super dope.
Super dope.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Life and Shyt.
Go enjoy those fantasies.
Have fun and sex.
Yes. Love you,
Plenty of it.
Love you too, baby. Do us a favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Leave a review. Let us know what your thoughts are. That's the only way that this show is going to be successful. And we appreciate you. Talk with you next time.